Yes. 2 meetings ago, when I suggested that we fine Alderman Keller $250, it was suggested that it wasn't the time and place. Now I believe we're 3, maybe 4 meetings with the chair empty to my left. And when asked the city attorney, the ordinance that you found was dated 2003. Well, I remember when Mayor Van Buren was here, we clarified the ordinance that it was $250 a meeting. Now, we may have decided on 1/24th, but the mayor would be $1,000 a meeting, and that was designed to prevent someone from an extended leave, not from occasional absence. But I would submit that now that we have 3 or 4 meetings in a row, and it seems to be that another job is more important than this job, that the ordinance says that it has to be decided by the aldermen that are present. My question is simply, do we decide it with these aldermen that are present at the next meeting after, say, a hearing, or do we decide right now? Because if it's all about money, that may be the only way to get them to start showing up again.
The ordinance that I referenced, Alderman Baker, is in Chapter 2, which deals with the City Council.
You mentioned it's a 2003 date. Is it possible that's a misprint, or is there another ordinance that we passed that you're not finding right now?
I don't believe this is a misprint. What may have happened is occasionally this particular code book is not updated as carefully as the rest of them are. The section that I referred you to is 2.07, which addresses the failure of members to attend a meeting. And it requires that the aldermen that are present determine whether or not the absence is made with good and sufficient cause, and it's up to you to determine whether or not there is in fact good and sufficient cause for the alderman's absence. What I would suggest, since there is no motion reflected on the agenda to impose a fine on Alderman Keller, that it would be inappropriate and a violation of the Open Meetings Act to make that vote without that being on the agenda. You can, of course, instruct us to review the ordinance, place that on the next agenda, and those of you who are present here today would certainly be able to discuss that. I don't recall that there has been any discussion as far as the reason for his absence, so perhaps that needs to be disclosed to all of you and discussed. That would also give me time to make sure that the portion of the ordinance that I'm referring to is the most current portion, and if it is not, I would certainly update you on that in writing.
Well, my question would be, can we have a hearing on all 4 of them, or because we didn't ask for it to be put on the agenda, we can only talk about tonight? That'd be my first question.
Well, I think you can certainly talk about all 4 of them. I don't believe you can take a vote on any of them because it is not on the agenda.
But I'm talking about at the next meeting. Would we be voting on the fine for just this meeting, or can we be talking about possibly up to all and including all 4 meetings?
The way the ordinance is drafted, it requires that the aldermen that are present at the meeting make a determination as to whether or not that good and sufficient cause for the absence is there. Since that has not been previously discussed, including a reason, I think that would have to be disclosed, and those would have to be discussed separately and voted on separately. I think since you're bringing this up for the first time and specifically referencing that portion of the ordinance, it may be wisest just to focus on tonight's absence. But that's certainly up to you. Do we know why Mr. Keller is not here tonight?
I received no word from him.
Do you want me to read?
I sent him a text earlier. And no response. And I mean, I think it's good for Alderman Baker to bring it up. I think it's right what you said, that tonight's a good night to set the course here, but then we can go back from historically. There's been 3 other meetings that he has called in on and said he couldn't make it because of his job requirements. But maybe I think we should follow what Dave is saying and kind of follow through on this one to find out if this is going to be a continued pattern. That's what I would suggest.
Then I would suggest to you gentlemen that the discussion that you should have here tonight is whether or not an unrepresented or unreported absence such as we have here tonight is good and sufficient cause for his absence.
That we could discuss that right now?
Yes.
I feel it's not. I mean, Mr. Simpson called ahead of time and made it clear that he could not be here. And the other times that Mr. Keller did call were 2 or 3 minutes before the meeting, and I did not hear him from tonight at all. So I really feel tonight is not a justification for not being here.
My concern is really one of the service aspect and the intention and you know, what's happening in his personal life, career, whatever it might be, what is the plan going forward? You know, the fine is one thing, but
Yes, and I plan to
I'm not
talk
sure
to him.
who- Okay, thank you. That's
Yeah,
really
that's
what I
my
would-
first thing I'm going to do.
That'd be my
is
suggestion,
try
is
to
that we
talk to
make
him.
contact, find out
Please.
what the circumstance is,
Yeah.
what's the plan going forward, and then if need be, follow up on.
We can put that on the
Mr.
agenda.
Baker's suggestion.
Yes, Mr. Naylor?
Is that something that you would discuss with Alderman
I'll
Keller?
discuss that with Alderman Keller.
And if not, would it be appropriate then to put it on the next agenda? Is
We can
that
add that to the
item?
agenda.
You can certainly direct us to have it
Would the
added
mayor
to the
report
next
on that then?
agenda.
Yeah,
Just
that's
report.
what I would like.
Do you want it on the next agenda? And if,
I
I would leave that up, personally, I would leave it up to the mayor. I mean, if he makes contact and there's good and sufficient reason and there's a go-forward position,
Okay.
then
That's not the way the ordinance reads.
that's my
This is-
suggestion.
Okay, I appreciate that. Do you want to read the text? Should I read the text I got from him?
No, I don't think that's appropriate right now.
Well, I mean, to let us know in roughly an hour or even minutes before a meeting, that's the question here. I mean,
And I think we can discuss that at a further meeting. I don't think this is appropriate for us to discuss now. Or do you think it is appropriate that we discuss whether or not we would even consider this meeting one that has justification for being missed?
well, if you do have information as far as why he is not here specifically tonight.
We should bring that up?
I think you should discuss that tonight.
Go ahead, Mr.
Well,
Baker, then go ahead.
normally,
I
would
apologize.
have, maybe exercise a little more discretion, but the city attorney is basically saying that if we don't disclose it now and discuss it, what the reason is, we can't set up a hearing or a vote next time. Is
Okay.
that what
Yeah, I
you're saying?
apologize, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
That's what the ordinance essentially says.
I've left him many messages and text messages for the last 4 meetings, begging him to show up. There were important votes. This time I left a message and texted him. I got a response that I noticed at 5:21 that he sent at 5:02 that said, "Can't, have to close, inventory tomorrow, please tell Chris, we'll call you later." And my response was, this is not cool. This is 4 in a row. You need to talk to Chris. And I reminded him so that hopefully he'll show up to the next meeting and we'll try to work this out. I said it's $250 per missed meeting if you were not aware. And, I mean, I consider this quite serious. We need his input. He's a great alderman, but he's choosing his other job over this job. It's got to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I'll go ahead then and meet with him and determine whether or not it should be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Well, do
And
we have-
I'll take the input.
I think we need to vote on if it's on the agenda, don't we? I don't think it's up to the mayor. You tell, city attorney, I'm asking for your, we've never had this come up.
Yeah, this is new, this is new territory
You know,
for us.
he's now broken the record. There hasn't been a string of more than 3 that I'm aware of, or even 2.
I think what I've tried to explain to you is that the ordinance requires for you to determine whether or not his reason for absence tonight is a good and sufficient reason. I know we have the text message from Alderman Baker, and I would assume it's going to be he was required to be at his other place of employment. The question for you, gentlemen, is that good and sufficient reason for him not to be here? And I think that's what your discussion tonight needs to center on. And if the majority of you believe that it's appropriate to put that on the next agenda, then it should be placed on the next agenda for a vote to impose a fine on him.
Chris, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
I would suggest this. I would say that tonight, it's been made public, and Dave, thank you for doing that, Alderman Baker.